Red algae, otherwise known as red tide. What is it and what can we do about it? What is red algae exactly? Red algae is something that we have definitely seen more and more each year, especially since 2017, popping up in our headlines. It's something that definitely affects our trips to the beach. Now, that's not something that's a big deal for us, but as for the economy, that's something that's definitely affected when vacationers as well as tourists cannot come down here due to red tide. The first thing I would really want to talk about is what causes red algae. The first thing to consider from an article from Ramping Up the Fight Against Florida Red Tides is it is naturally occurring. It is not man-made. It is born from toxic red algae blooms. It has been recorded since the 1500s, ever since Spanish explorers had recorded Native Americans warning them about not fishing from discolored waters. Now, we didn't really see much about this before, but ever since we had seen an increase in human influences such as nutrient pollution, such as fertilizer runoff, we saw there was a big explosion of red tide in 2017, and then a new bloom of algae was spawned in 2018 with troughs with it, and that created a huge spawn of dead sea life as well as coastal hazards for Florida. Now, why exactly is red tide so bad? As I just discussed, it's a huge danger to marine life. Each year it seems to be getting bigger and bigger. It's dangerous to the ecosystem. We can't eat the fish from it. We can't attend the beach. It's a huge disaster for local economy as well as the state economy. And the biggest thing that I think is the largest issue to consider is it's actually hazardous to human health. Whenever these toxic algae release their spores into the air, humans can actually suffer from respiratory illnesses, gastrointestinal illnesses, and the worst one is neurological illnesses, all from a simple algae bloom. Now, the biggest thing to consider when we look at how do we reduce red tide is we need to treat it, not prevent it. That's the biggest thing people are confused about, is their biggest thing is how do we prevent red tide. The fact that it is naturally occurring, it's never going to go away. So we have to face that, and we have to look at ways of how to treat it, not prevent it. Florida legislature can allocate funds to local counties to maintain sewage infrastructure, and they can also do things such as tighter regulations, such as what goes into our fertilizer, what goes into regulating and monitoring stormwater drainage systems and things like that. Florida legislature definitely has the funds to do it. We just have to figure out ways to allocate which counties and how to go about monitoring it and things like that. A perfect example and a prime example from UFL.edu was Manatee County sets a perfect example of what you should do when it comes to using fertilizers. They've actually banned nitrogen and phosphorus from their fertilizers, which will cut down immensely on red tide. Now, after all things considered, we know that red tide is dangerous, we know that prevention is needed, but we still want to go to the beach and we still want to enjoy ourselves until we figure out more ways to prevent it. Now, according to the FDA and the CDC, they have said that we can use masks while we walk on the beach and things like that. Now, I know that's not exactly the most fun thing, but it's something that we can do so that way we're not ingesting those toxic spores that I mentioned earlier. We always want to consider the dangers that it has to humans. We always want to consider the dangers it has to the ecosystem as well as the marine life. And hopefully by presenting these dangers, especially the local Florida government as well as other sponsors, they can actually do something larger than just simply talking about it. We can actually figure out a way to prevent it and get back to normal beach life. And thank you for listening.